Hi, I'm Stuart Bull and welcome to the Last Honest Man podcast. Okay, so going to have a little bit of a Van Halen themed podcast episode. I'm a big fan, as I think most guitar players are. Never met anyone who doesn't like Edward. So just a little bit of product news. They've just released from the Iconic series the 1x10, I want to say 15 watt combo, and I'm pretty sure there's a 60 watt combo as well. And shout out to my good friend Nick Bocott at Sweetwater for doing an excellent demo product review of this, and he really did a great job. So back in the 90s, my local music store in Romford in Essex was called Monkey Business. Went on to be PMT, but another very interesting story there, but I won't go into that right now. But anyway, that was my local music store, and I used to live literally like 100 yards away from it, maybe a little bit more, but walk down there all the time. So they got, a PV 5150 in there, and I loved it. I couldn't make it sound bad. It was just it seemed like everything you did, it just sounded good. And I ended up buying two, and I ran them in a particular way, which I think Phil Hilborn showed me how to do, and I'll mention him later in the podcast for something else. But yeah, I had a basically stereo setup with Intel effects and some pedals, and if you want to know how I did that, then let me know in the comments. And this was a really great setup. So I absolutely loved these amps, and I used them on tons and tons of things. The only thing for me was I didn't use the rhythm channel for like overdriven rhythm, if that makes any sense. I used that for clean. I used the red channel with the gain down and then a super overdrive pedal. I think I went between that and the tube screamer if it was, for solos. And then I had a MIDI thing controlling the Intel effects. That was the basic setup. So that was my first experience of the PV5150, and now the Iconic series is bringing that back with some other things as well. So I want to tell you a story, a Van Halen story, which I hope you'll like, which is like, made me kind of like, I just loved Edward. I mean, I loved him before, but this was the first time I met him, and so, it just blew me away. So, as I mentioned before, the guitar player Phil Hilborn, I'm sure you'll know, he was working for, I think it was either Guitarist magazine or Guitar Techniques. I don't know which one it was, I really don't remember. But he was interviewing Eddie Van Halen for this magazine in London somewhere. So Edward invited him, I think it was the next night or a couple of nights later, to see the band rehearse at the Docklands Arena. And it was the for unlawful carnal knowledge. Try saying that 10 times fast. For unlawful carnal knowledge. Is that right? Yeah. Tour of Europe, and they'd hired the Docklands Arena to rehearse. So I don't know whether it was just in one of their phone calls or whether he called me. I don't remember exactly how it happened. But he said, "Look, I've interviewed him. He's invited me down to this rehearsal. And, I can't go because he had a gig or whatever he was doing. And, you should go." So I was like, "Fun, yeah, I'm going." So anyway, on the night of when it was, the next night or a couple of nights, whatever it was, I went down there and I just walked in the front door. And, just walked in bowls brass. Nobody stopped me. I went and kind of sat on a flight case as far away as I possibly could. And I was there for a good while and just kind of, keeping quiet and not saying anything. And eventually somebody from the road crew or the management, whoever it was, came over and said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, my buddy Phil Hilborn." Anyway, before I couldn't even get to the end of the sentence, I said, "Look, man, you're going to have to leave." But they wasn't mean or anything from what I remember, but it was like, you got to leave. So anyway, I left and I was outside feeling very sort of down and despondent that I hadn't got to, meet one of my heroes. But I decided to wait outside for a little while, which I did. And then I remember this Toyota Previa came driving up, and I could see that the manager at the time, who's now passed on, Ed Leffer, he was in the driving seat, he was driving, Edward was in the front seat, and then Alex Van Halen and Michael Anthony were in the back, and Sammy Hagar, I don't remember where Sammy Hagar was, but he was in there somewhere, or maybe he travelled separately, I don't really remember. So I sort of stood in front of this Toyota Previa and sort of, hey guy, can you stop? So Edward opened the window. He said, hey man, whatever it was, I said, oh hey, my buddy Phil Hilborn interviewed you, and he can't make it to the road. Anyway, before I got to the end of the sentence again, Ed Leffer just drove off. So I thought, oh, okay, that's sort of the end of that. So I kind of turned and started walking away from the venue. And then all of a sudden there was this tap on my shoulder. I turned around, it's Eddie Van Halen. He says, sorry about that, what were you saying again? I said, oh, my buddy was interviewing you a couple of nights ago, he said you were playing. He goes, okay, no problem, he goes, come in with me. So I couldn't believe it. I mean, I absolutely couldn't believe it. It's the only way I can put it in. So we went in, and he basically, there were seats there for press and invited people, because it wasn't a gig, it was just rehearsing, as I said before. So anyway, he said, right, you got me a seat? He said, you might have said behave yourself or something like that, I don't know, but obviously he made me slightly worried that I was trying to get in illegally, as it were. But anyway, he was super cool, he gave me the seat. I sat there, he went through all these different solo parts, and then the band played tunes from the FUCK album. And it was just fantastic. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. And the funny thing about it was Wolfgang Van Halen, who I think was about 4 at the time, something 4 or 5, but I think 4, and I think maybe one of Sammy Hagar's daughters, they were kind of dancing around at the front of the stage, in front of us and in front of the stage. And they had these kind of big headphone things on, which was obviously to kind of shield them from the sheer power of Van Halen. Not good for a 4-year-old, 4-year-old ears, for girl or boy. But I seem to remember him at the time. He had rhythm. He was kind of dancing around. Wow, that kid's got it. So anyway, after they got finished with the, with the rehearsal, I actually went over, I believe Valerie Bertinelli was there, but I went over to the side of the stage where Edward was, and I saw all the gear, it was all there, and I said, oh, thanks man, thanks him. And again, he was super cool, he's like, hey, absolutely no problem, and everything, and I wasn't going to ask him for his number or anything, I was just grateful I had a quick look around the gear. I don't think there was any mobile phones at the time, I wouldn't have taken a photo anyway. But that was it, and I kind of left that place one happy little rocker. It was absolutely brilliant. So that's that story. And going back to the 5150s, some years later, when I don't exactly remember what was going on in my life at that time, but I fell on hard times and I didn't really have any money. I wasn't living on the street or anything, but I really didn't have any money, and I had to sell some equipment. And my buddy Dave from Music Tech, I sold him my guitar that I'd had built at Chandler's, which was that kind of broke my heart, But he loved the guitar, so I thought, well, at least it's gone to a good home. Some PA speakers, some other stuff. And I had to get rid of the PV5150s. Now, for those of you who don't know, I actually went to school with Michael Caswell. We've never been great big mates. I'm not going to try and make out that we are, but there was a mutual respect there. He was a couple of years younger than me at school, and I'll do an episode about Mike at some point in the future. But anyway, I said to Mike, "Hey man, I've got to get rid of these, these amplifiers. Do you want to buy them?" And he did. But at the time, he was kind enough to give me the money that I wanted for one of the amplifiers, which I'm pretty sure was fair, and he left the other one there. Now, he could have took it and resold it, or whatever, but he didn't. I think he was just being a good guy and thought, you'll get through this, you'll have an amp and I'll have an amp, and we'll both be happy. And obviously he used to use it at the Cauliflower when he was playing with a band called East of Java, and he always sounds great, it doesn't matter what he plays through. He always sounds fantastic. So I saw him there playing with the amp, and he had one and I had one. And the thing is, I actually ended up having a system where I didn't need 2 amps. Like I basically, you know, because I was a big Van Halen nut, and I think I'd seen on one of the Guitar World, I don't know what they called them, but it was where they would do like a page in Guitar World where they would do like a sort of almost like cartoon, not cartoon, but almost like a sort of depiction of the rig, the Van Halen rig. And what he was doing was, at the time, you probably all know this, was he was coming out of the 5150 into a Palmer speaker simulator, and then that would bring it down to line level, and then he would go into an H&H V800 power amp, and that would be what would power the cabs. So I knew a guy that had one of these. So his name's Martin, I can't remember his second name now, but he used to work for Akai. I used to demonstrate for Akai, that's how I got to know him. So anyway, I bought the amp off him, I think it was 150 quid. And I built this rig with a Lexicon reverb, the small one you've seen people use, small rack mount one. I had an IntelliFX. That might have been it, because that was mainly those 2 things. And then I think what I did was I took the send or the preamp out of the 5150 into the reverb, so that would run. And somehow, I can't remember exactly how I did it, so basically the IntelliFX and reverb ran, I think they called it sort of parallel to each other. And that was the rig that I started to use. And it was 2 cabinets, and the way that I did it was I used the 2 inside speakers of each cabinet for the direct sound, and then the outside of the cabinets for the effect sound. So it was basically a wet-dry rig, and I managed to get it out of 2 cabinets without having to have 3. And I remember I think I know who it was, but it was a guitarist that was fairly famous at the time, and we were playing at the Royal Standard in Walthamstow. And I was with my band. I don't know if we were calling it Fire of London at the time or the Stuart Ball Band, but whatever it was, I was actually singing, and the bass player sang as well. Thank God I've got a little bit better now. But anyway, I remember this guy came in and he said, "Oh, so we've got some support bastards, have we?" And I thought, right, I'm going to play my butt off tonight. And I've got to say, my rig sounded absolutely fantastic, and somebody recorded it. It might have been a guy called Dave Ball. And he was asking me about the sound, saying, it just seems like it just soars, you know? It was a little bit of luck. I mean, I built the rig off of this thing and it just seemed to work somehow. And then I remember this guitar player kind of like, when he started playing, I think he probably regretted calling us bastards. But anyway, I'm sure it was in the best of fun. And so I ended up just using that 1 amp, and that worked really well. And then, you know, obviously a little bit of success after that, so I didn't have to sell any more gear, and I don't think I've sold anything since. Now, I've got another story for you, which you may or may not find entertaining. I wouldn't say that I invented the 5150 overdrive pedal, but I may have sparked the idea of it existing. And I'll tell you how that came about. Some time later, I don't even know if it was before, I want to say it was later. But anyway, PV were having a special sort of visitation of Eddie Van Halen at the booth at NAMM this particular year. And one of the things he was obviously talking about was the 5150 amp, and it might have even been the 5152 by then, I don't know. But it was the 5150 amp. And they had to give you like this guitar pick that you would use to get in, right? So I don't know if I knew someone there or what happened, but I got one of the guitar picks. I was like, yes, can't believe it. So anyway, I think it might have been the fact that he was doing the guitar at that point. It might have been the Wolfgang guitar, and obviously he was playing it through the 5150, the PV one at the time. That might have been what it was. But anyway, so the afternoon came around, went there, got there early, so got in the queue, and then we got into the booth itself and took a seat. And so, you know, I'm always dying to ask questions And if anyone wants to know my Simon Phillips story, put it in the comments, I'll be glad to tell you. He told me this, he said, I told Mick Jagger that story. And it really made me laugh. He did a clinic at Monkey Business. He wasn't supposed to play, but he did. And I said, oh, hey, I'm the guy from Logan Hall. And he was like, not you again. Anyway, that's a story for another time. So anyway, got in the booth, got my seat, was waiting to ask my question. He did his playing. Some of the press asked some questions. I had my hand up, and then whoever was kind of like, tabling the questions said, okay, pointed towards me. So I said, hey, have you ever thought about doing an overdrive pedal, as well as the amp? And he wasn't too happy about that. He said, hey man, you don't think there's enough distortion on the amp, man? And I said, well, yeah, but not everybody can afford that. And I think a pedal would be great. And people started booing me. So obviously, Eddie Van Halen is not someone you're going to get into. I would get into an argument anyway, being a big fan. But I wasn't going to get into an argument with him. And obviously, anyone says anything against Edward, you're just going to get booed. So that's pretty much what happened to me. So I just kept my mouth shut. Still enjoyed it, still great, very grateful for the opportunity to go in there. But where it got even more interesting was some years later, he came out with a 5150 overdrive pedal. I'm like, dude, I said that, and everybody booed me. I was thinking, what happens now? You put your foot on it and it starts booing? And it's a great pedal. I actually haven't got one yet. But I will do. I think it's quite similar to the Friedman Brown Eye pedal, but it's a great high gain pedal, and I really should get one. I've got two of the Van Halen phasers, I've got the flanger, I've got two of the wah-wahs. I don't know why I didn't get the overdrive pedal, but I'm sure I will in the future. And I think that's it, because I haven't, that's my kind of PV 5150 overdrive pedal story, and so I think I will call it there. So if you want me to do any other subjects or any particular lessons pertaining to Van Halen or anybody else, I'd be happy to do that. If you would subscribe to my YouTube channel and also my podcast, which I make these YouTube videos podcast now, that'd be great. And also, if you wouldn't mind checking out guitarstarclothing.com, got one of the shirts on right now, that'd be great. Check out our designs, and maybe if you consider making a purchase, it helps me with the videos and just to keep doing more of this stuff. So thanks guys, hope that was fun, hope that was interesting. Please leave it. Oh, actually, no, there is one more thing. I'm sorry. There is one more thing I did want to talk about real quick, and that is the conception of how the 5150 amp came about. Sorry, I almost forgot. I think I remember who told me this, but I can't mention his name. But his initials are Nigel Spennery. But if you didn't tell me this, Nigel, then I apologise, but I think you did, so I'm not sure. But anyway, I think Nigel, or definitely somebody, told me that PV had offered Eddie Van Halen $60,000 to have a picture with a PV Bandit. I owned a PV Bandit, great little combo, I thought. I used to record a lot of stuff with it. And allegedly, he didn't want to do that. He was using, at this time, I believe, the Soldano 100-watt amp. I think that Mike Soldano had done some work on his on the famous Marshall Super Lead head, which I think it was 100-watt, and he bought some Soldanos from him, some Soldano heads from him. And it sounds to me like on the 1984 album that is what he was using. I mean, maybe in conjunction with some other things. But anyway, so he was offered this $60,000 allegedly. And if anyone knows different to this, please put it in the comments, let me know, so I want to know if the story's true. So he was offered this $60,000 and he said, no. He said, but are you interested in making me something like this Soldano? And allegedly, that is what they did. they took the Soldano idea. Just lots of people have done it with Marshall and various other companies, and they made that head, and apparently that is what became the 5150 head. But like I say, if I didn't hear that from you, Nigel, I apologise, but I don't know why I think it was you, but I do. And if anybody knows the true story about that, let me know. And one last thing that comes to mind, I think I read this somewhere or somebody told me, was a really interesting thing. And if there's any Steve Vai fans out there that know about this, please let me know. So the way I heard it was that Jose Arredondo was modding some of the Marshall heads that Eddie Van Halen had. And I had one modded, not by Jose, he'd already passed away, but by a guy who had the circuit, a guy in Las Vegas, who knew how to do it and did it to mine. And it sounded fantastic. I've still got it to this day. Absolutely brilliant. So apparently when David Lee Roth left Van Halen and teamed up with Steve Vai asked him about the Van Halen sound, because that was something that David Lee Roth was very used to. And he told him that it was Jose who was modding Edwards amps, and that, Steve Vai should go to him, which apparently he did. But again, I don't know that for sure, but apparently he did, and that actually upset Edward in a big way. And there was some discourse over that. But from what I understand, Steve Vai and Eddie Van Halen were very good friends, at some point. And so obviously, whatever issues there were resolved. But that's a few stories for you about Van Halen. And like I say, what a great guy. Can't believe it. And that story of the front for unlawful carnal knowledge will always stick with me until the day I pass away. So brilliant. Like I say, please subscribe to the channel and please subscribe to the podcast and check out Guitar Star Clothing. Check out our designs and see if there's anything you like. Okay, until next time, guys, I'll talk to you soon.